Snow fell in specks so small they seemed the ghosts of snow, drifting through the naked boughs of the godswood and settling on the red carved face, so that the tears running from its eyes looked like frost. The pool had taken a thin skin of ice in the night and would not be persuaded to melt though the noon had come and gone, and the wind that combed the leaves had the quiet persistence of a beggar hand. Eddard Stark stood alone beside the water and watched the lights of Winterfell play in the mirror of it. Dim lantern glows and the pale banners of breath curling from the mouths of the guards on the wall. He had stood there often, for the trees had learned his name before most men did, and he had learned the sound of his own mind when it tried to run from itself. The chill had found his bones as it always did when he stood too long among the old gods. But the cold could not argue away the thought that kept returning, warm as blood and just as stubborn. He had asked counsel of it in the night as he climbed down to the crypts and stood before the stone figure whose face he had never seen alive, and again as he came up through the dark with the smell of earth and stone in his nostrils. His sister's likeness had lain in the torchlight like a winter queen, the roses carved along her scabbard dusted with cobweb, the hair on her brow cut in clean grooves by a mason's chisel rather than time. She had given him a promise once. He had carried it behind his ribs so long that sometimes he mistook it for one of them. Now he put 2 fingers on the ridges of the weirwood's bark, pressing into the dry, blood-red bands that spiraled around its trunk. The tree gave him nothing, as was its way, but in the stillness he heard the muffled reports of sword on sword from the yard, each stroke thickened by the air until it sounded far away. There were shouts too, young voices raised without fear because the yard was theirs and the walls loved them. He knew them by sound as a shepherd knows his flock. Robb with his rough laugh when he landed a blow he had aimed too high, Theon with the bark of someone who had more confidence than sense, Jon with the silence that came, always, before he answered. He let the quiet gather. The question had turned until it no longer looked like a question but a choice that had already been made and was only waiting for him to turn toward it. He had thought that naming his heir was simple once, too simple, a thing that only required patience and a clear head. It had been simple first, when he held his firstborn boy wet and furious in his arms and Cat's eyes were bright with triumph and fear. Simple again when the second came and the third. Simple when he took each of his children to the gods, would one by one and pressed their tiny hands against the trunk and told them in a voice that did not tremble that they belonged. There had always been this other boy though, the one he had brought home in a fever of gratitude and grief, the one with whom he could not share the same sentences as he did with the others. He had put him under his roof and given him a place at his table and set down all the words that could not be said between them. The distance had preserved them both. It had hurt every day. The snow found gray wind first because the wolf had not the patience to lie still, and in a moment the yard broke into a white awareness of flakes. Eddard closed his hand against the bark and looked at the ripple of ice on the pool. He had not called the banners nor sent riders to gather the lords of the north. He had not sat down with the account of what houses would bend and which would resist. He had only done what a man does when his mind corners him. He had decided, and he would do the deciding aloud before nightfall, or else he would never dare. Naming an heir is not an act of iron. The iron comes later, when men hear. He turned from the weirwood and walked out of the godswood through the thick green tunnel of yew. The rime had furred the branches in a fine white coat, so his shoulder brushed against a line of cold. The 2 guards at the gate straightened when he passed them, boys still, with cheeks peeled red by the air. He knew their names. He always did. That practice had kept his house strong through winters others only read about in old books. He nodded and went out into the yard. Robb and Jon circled each other in the hard-packed snow, faces flushed above their quilted practice coats. Theon called from the wall, "You're too slow, Snow. Move him to his left." And when Jon ignored him, he called again with something cruder that drew a snort of amusement from gray wind where he lounged by the half-frozen trough, tongue lolling. Ghost was nowhere seen, which meant he was closer than any of them thought. Jory stood with the wooden sword, waiting to tell them when enough had become too much. Jon's blade flicked out. Robb parried and stepped close, the blunt wood kissing Jon's shoulder, and the 2 of them were wrapped for a moment in the mechanical intimacy of boys. When it ended, they stood grinning at each other, each enjoying the other's breathing. They were no more alike than birch and ash, But in these moments, they were branches in the same wind. If Eddard had had a heart built differently, he might have turned away rather than break whatever was bright in front of him. He did not turn away. "Enough," he said. The yard hushed more quickly than it needed to. The wolves lifted their heads. Rob wiped his brow with the back of his wrist and grinned in the direction of his father, already sure of approval. John's eyes went to the ground and then up again, quick as the movement of a sparrow. "We will talk," Eddard said. "Washington, come to the Great Hall in an hour. What have we done now?" Theon muttered in a voice just loud enough for the boys to hear, and Rob made a face at him while he laughed. John came forward, testing his right shoulder as if expecting the practice blow to have L.
Est something permanent.
"Lord, in an hour," Eddard said gently. "All of you, Cat as well if you find her. The children." "Which children?" Theon asked, right on the edge of insolence, which was where he liked to live. He was 20 in the way a dog will be 2 until it dies. "All of them," Eddard said, and the man in Theon blinked and said nothing more. In the maester's tower between the hearth and the window where he kept his herbs, Luwin had weighted the parchment down with a bar of iron to keep it from curling. He had been mending a broken clasp on the chain that encircled his own throat, and the little pliers lay open on the table with their lips parted as though listening. Eddard stood watching as the old man's neat hand finished the last lines, and there was a comfort in the way the ink dried without blotting. Maester Luwin's presence had always been like a fire banked right, warmth without smoke, light without glare. "You may be certain," Luwin said without looking up, "that this is the sort of message that cannot be unsent, my lord." "There is no leech that pulls letters," Eddard said, "and if I waver, I will wander in it forever." Luwin sanded the page with practiced gentleness and lifted the iron bar. He slid the parchment toward Eddard and let him read. The letter did not say more than it had to. It did not try to justify itself, or set down words that peace lovers could stand upon later and say only this, only that. It did not mention the true name of the boy at the center of it. It said, "Lord Yon Royce, your counsel has never been cheap or easy, which is why I ask for it." It said, "The North must be wed to the mountains in fact, not only in our memory of the rebellion." It said, "If the Vale remains shuttered to the storms of the South, the North will be only that much more alone, and alone they will take us one by one." It said, "I intend to name Jon Snow my heir at Winterfell." It said, "Men I trust will object. Men I do not trust will object louder." It said, "If you will meet with me, with Anya Waynwood, with Nestor of the Gates, and what other lords you judge both stout and sensible, I will come to you or send mine to you, and we will make between us a bridge." It said, "We do not need King's Landing to tell us how to keep our own." Eddard's throat tightened as he read those lines and knew, as a man knows when the last beam is raised and the roof takes its weight, that everything that followed would owe itself to this hour. When he looked up, Luwin's head was cocked and his eyes were full of all the questions that he was too mannerly to ask. He had been born south of the neck and had learned north ways with the ease that comes when a man wants to and knows he must. He did not tell Eddard what the rills would say, the Dreadfort, the Wolfswood. He did not remind him that King Robert smiled more and thought less with every cup. He said only, "You may have whatever ravens you like. I will not chase every rook from our roof," Eddard said, a touch of wryness he did not feel. "Let 3 go to Runestone, to Ironokes, to the gates." "And to the Eyrie?" Luwin asked softly. Eddard laid his hand on the warm oak of the table and splayed the fingers. "No. I will not put my words into Lisa's house without knowing whose eyes will read them. If bronze is still spoken where I hope it is, that will be enough." "Bronze is spoken there," Luwin said, though in this too he was too wise to make his voice certainty when it was only likelihood. "It is the South that has learned to forget." Eddard nodded. "Seal them." Wax took the shape of the direwolf the way it always did, with nothing to distinguish today from 100 other days except that this time his hand shook. He pressed the ring down until the wolf's muzzle leveled with the wax. He did not draw it up at once. When he did, the light from the window touched the gleam, and for a moment it looked like blood. Luwin's sleeve hissed as he turned to his shelves. He left the maester to his ravens and descended. Cat would be in the sept if she had not gone to the kitchens to chide the cook over the salt for supper. She had never quite resigned herself to winter fare, with its honest emphasis on root over spice and meat over frippery. He found her under the seven-faced crystal, kneeling on the thick carpets that had been spun in a riverland town more prosperous than it was now. She did not turn when he entered, and he did not interrupt her prayers. When the last word fell from her lips, she drew a breath and lifted her head as if she had come up from water. The sept smelled faintly of beeswax and warm wool. The candles had been trimmed with precision that morning and burned cleanly. This room and the godswood had learned one another over the years, he thought. Each kept his wife and him as the other saw fit. She rose when his shadow reached her, turned and took his hands. "You look as you do when you have been with your sister," she said. It was one of the things he loved her for. She did not make him tell her which sister, for she knew the word that had no flesh now and the one who moved through the castle with the living children at her skirts. "I was with my thoughts," he said. "I have never seen you leave them." She searched his face, and when she saw that this was not a day for cleverness, she sobered. "What is it?" "We will meet in the hall," he told her. "I want the household, the children." A line shadowed her mouth. "So formal? If it is nothing that must be said among all of them, say it to me first." He would have liked very much to say it to her first, to sit beside her on their bed and hold her hands until she heard and read what was not in the words. But he was not that young a husband anymore. Their marriage had become in part the arrangement that preserved what their marriage was. He was not afraid of her unhappiness. He was afraid of his own softness before it. "In the hall," he said. "It was not a husband's and swear. It was a lord's." She took it, her spine straightening one more finger's breadth, and nodded. "Very well, then I had better prepare. They will have questions." "They will," he said. He ate nothing before the hour, though the kitchen had sent someone to tell him there was barley with onions and bits of bacon crisped in their own fat. He had learned long ago that bread taken too early swelled and made a man sluggish when he needed to be light. The hall was already warm when he entered. The high seats had been polished with oil, and the long tables had been set with trenchers and cups because a hall looks wrong without them even when no one plans to eat. The wolves loped in together and sprawled under the dais, each flung into the posture of its own nature. Gray wind half-curled but alert, Nymeria with her head on her paws looking like a river stone, Lady arranged as if to be inspected, as if aware of eyes, Summer twitching with a dream, and Ghost sliding without sound into a shadow where the light could not lay a hand on him. Every one of them knew his voice. He told them with a glance to be still. The family and the household came in. Rob first, the first to everything, bearing his red-brown hair like a banner and keeping his expression carefully casual so that no one would call him boy. Sansa with Lady padding at her side, a ribbon the color of winter berries in her hair, already poised for something fine to happen. She had put on her best. Arya trailing her big sister, trying not to be caught, but full of attention anyway. Summer brushed her hip to steady her in the way he had learned to. Bran, whose eyes went always where they ought and where they ought not, with Jory's hand on his shoulder. Rickon holding to old Nan's skirt with one hand and to a length of sausage in the other, staring solemnly at the ceiling as if it might fall. Jon came last of the boys, clean-scrubbed and sober, Ghost slipping and going still in the near gloom. Catelyn entered with Sansa, as was right, and he saw that she had laid aside the simple gown she wore for mornings for a darker one, the better to hold her shape. He wondered if she had done it because she had guessed and wanted to arm herself. Beside them Theon leaned on the back of a chair with both hands, curious and cocksure. The captains of the guards took their places. Vayen Poole's careful eyes counted as a habit of his blood. A few of the older men from the village had come at the word as well, for Winterfell gathered its people to itself when it breathed. There is no good way to say a thing that turns the table upside down. Eddard had learned the ugly truth that the best way is to place your hand upon the table and press it flat and speak anyway. The words came out quieter than he had meant. It was astonishment that he had not used them years ago, and the astonishment made him mild. "You were told to come so that you might hear what I intend," he said. A lord's house is made by the men and women who live inside its walls, and by the young who grow inside those men and women, and by the old who have left us their bones in the ground. They must know what hand guides it and who will guide it after. He let his eyes go to Rob first, and he saw in the boy's face how quickly the boy had put himself where he sat in his own imagination, at the height of the table, hand on the hilt of the old greatsword, hair full of summer. The blow reached him before it was struck, and Eddard hated that. In a fortnight, or when the roads allow, I will call my bannermen to Winterfell, he said. I will sit with them and hear them, and in their company, beneath the eyes of the old gods and the new, I will name Jon my heir. It was too quiet at first. Then a stirring ran from one bench to the next, just under the level of words, like the first movement of a pond when a fish turns under the surface. Catelyn had not moved. Her hands lay folded in her lap, decided in their stillness. If she had prepared in the sept, it had only been enough to keep her from standing and leaving when she heard. Her eyes did not go to Jon. They went to Rob. Rob stood up and then had the sense to sit back down, his mouth parting in a boy's untrained, open surprise. He had fought this boy in the yard every day of his remembering. He had borrowed his tunics. He had stolen his last bite. He had crawled with him under the table to find the dog's litter. And he stared at him as if he were some creature he had never seen. Then the boy who was young in him stepped aside and the other one came forward, the one that had been practicing in him without his knowing. He turned his head toward his father and set his jaw. You said. I said what I needed to, Eddard said gently, which sounded even to him like cruelty. I will explain more to those who need to hear more later, but you have to hear this now, all of you. Jon is under my protection, which is another way of saying under my name. For years that has been enough. It is no longer. Enough for what? Theon demanded, because he had no patience with the slow geometry of other men's households. The boy's a bastard and always will be. Gods, Stark. Theon. Jory's voice fell like a hand upon a table in a quiet room, and Theon actually bit back whatever else he had meant to say. He had learned something in his 10 years after all. He compensated by scowling theatrically at Ghost, who did not bother to show any attention. Jon had not moved. He had gone very pale, which made his eyes blacker. He did not look surprised. He looked as if someone had called him to a precipice and told him to step. My lord, he said softly. You will stand with me, Eddard said. Always, Jon said in the same soft voice. He had given the answer of a child. There were times when that broke a man's heart too quickly. Eddard was careful to keep his expression the way he kept his swords, polished and calm. Catelyn turned her head toward him then, and he took the look as a blow because he knew its weight exactly from the day he had brought the boy through the gates. Explain, she said, not loudly, not a wife before a hall, but a woman who had watched a current in her own house and seen that it would take one of her children from her whether she liked it or not. Say why. He could say 100 things that would all be true and none would be the truth. He might say that the walls of Winterfell have held longer than any other because they have never been left useless and proud. He might say that a bastard's name is an insult, and there is a point at which a man has the power to ease an insult and must do it or be lesser. He might say that Jon's head is steady and his heart slow to anger and his arm fast when it must be, that he has learned to be silent in a house where many speak, which is a lord's virtue. He could not say that Bran, unknowing, had told him the night before, in the way children's talk often runs ahead of them, that he had climbed where he should not and had seen Catelyn on the stairs to the tower where the cold makes ghosts of men's breath, and she had been crying, and he had asked her why and she had said because there are storms that do not show themselves on the sky. He could not say that he had gone to the crypt and thought he heard Lyanna say something that only his horror made into a word. He could not say that he had been a good brother once and had learned that the price for that had been a debt that had no end. He said, because the North must be stronger than it is. She stared at him until the match burned down at last and she had to drop it. I thought I had married a man who tells me the whole of what he means to do. He took a breath. You did. You also married a lord who must do things that make the things he does look like something else. We will speak as husband and wife later, she said. In this hall, I am only another of your subjects. It was worse that she should be gracious. He saw the children look between them and learn and not know what they had learned. He turned back to those who could use a simpler argument and said, "It will be needful in any case to make John's name not what it is. The king's hand has sealed letters to make a baseborn boy into a trueborn man many times. We will ask it of him when he comes, and he will grant it. With that done, a man might name any of his sons who has a Stark's blood as his heir. John will be that man. Rob will be his brother and his right hand, as he has been. There will be those who hiss and say again that the order of age is the order of inheritance. But they will not say that in this hall. They will say it in their own halls if they like. I will answer them. When the old gods and the new agree, men usually consent." Rob swallowed. "When the king..." He began, then stopped when he heard himself say it like a boy asking his father when he might go to the river. He started again with a man's caution. "If the king does not agree, he will," Eddard said, as if he were certain. "He will enjoy the granting of it. He is that sort of man." That pulled a breath of laughter out of Theon, which broke the tension in the hall in a small, wrong way. Sansa looked relieved without knowing why. Arya was not relieved, only interested, one hand in Nymeria's coat. Bran's gaze darted and caught and darted again. Rickon had lost interest and was feeding a sliver of sausage to his wolf. "We will be tested on this," Eddard said. "Perhaps not soon. Perhaps in 5 years or 10. Men, remember, I do not choose this lightly, but I choose it. I will ask Stark men to stand by it." "You will ask," said Catelyn, and one part of her gentleness that had always been at hand went out of the room like a candle. Afterward, he took Jon to his solar and shut the door. The fire had been laid but not lit, and the room was honest with the smell of old maps and the tree gum Luwin used to mend their edges. He could say it here. There were times to say something in a hall. There were times to put your hand on a boy's shoulder and make sure you were the only voice he could answer. "You can refuse," Eddard said. Jon blinked. It was not the sentence he had expected. "I cannot refuse you," he said. And in that he was the boy Eddard had brought through the gate with frost in his hair and a fever in his heart. The boy who had learned where to sit at table by watching the faces of others and counting how many chairs there were. "You are I am your father," Eddard said quietly, and Jon's head lifted like a man who has taken a blow and found it was lighter than he had imagined. "I mean that in the way that matters, not the way people whisper after their cups. I will not ask this of you as a lord asks. I will ask as a man with his hand on a door, telling another man there is a storm on the other side and asking him to go out first." Jon's breathing stilled until it was simply the presence of breath. When he spoke again, it was the voice he did not always use because it was heavier than he could carry. "Why? You have a steadiness in you that you did not learn from me," Eddard said, "and a patience that you learned, I think, from not being able to change what you could not change. Those are the best things a lord can have besides an honest sword arm. You have that too. But I would not choose a boy to be my heir because he swings a sword in the yard and looks well doing it." Jon looked down. "Robb will hate me. Robb will be angry with me," Eddard said. "He will be angry with you because it is easier and because you will be close. In time, he will love you again. He does not know yet how he loves you. You will not let him make war on you. You will find work for his anger that does not break the things you share. And your lady," Jon said, and there was no child anywhere in that voice. "She will forgive you?" "Not soon," Eddard said, and it was the plain, ugly truth he owed him. Perhaps not ever. Her anger is not an ornament. It is a thing that has shape and weight and occupies space in a room. If you choose this, you will live with it. If you do not choose it, you will live with something that never stops putting its fingers under your ribs. I cannot tell you which is kinder. I can tell you which I can live with." Jon moved his hands in front of him as if testing a string. "If the king's letters do not come," he said, "I will act as if they had," Eddard said. "I will be wrong by the letter and right by the walls. It will not be the first time a northern lord has been the one when the south was not looking. John nodded, and for a moment Eddard could see the boy as he had seen him once, curled in a featherbed under a heavy blanket, looking surprised to be warm, whispering his thanks to no one in particular so that no one would hear he had learned the habit. Then he nodded again, differently, and the moment humiliated Eddard with its tenderness. "I will not refuse," John said. "I want what you want." "Want is a complicated word," Eddard said, but he did not push him from it. He put his hand on John's shoulder and felt the strength of it, which was not the strength of boys who have only ever been told yes. "I will send a letter to Lord Yon Royce, and to Lady Waynwood, and to Nestor Royce at the gates. You will foster in the Vale a while, perhaps in one of their houses, perhaps at Runestone itself. You have the look of one of them when your hair falls over your brow." He brushed at it, and John fidgeted away, embarrassed. "They are hard men and good ones. The Vale needs us and we need the Vale. Stark's sons have done worse things than learn Bron's ways." John's first, small smile broke through like a water vole's head at the edge of the pool. "Bron's ways," he repeated, like a word he had been given and wanted to carry in his mouth a while. Then the smile went away because he remembered the hall. "Rob." "He will be told more than was said there," Eddard said. "He deserves that." John swallowed. "Can I have an hour?" "Take a day," Eddard said. The ravens went between snowfalls, dark tongues in a white mouth. Lewin sent one to Runestone that beat its wings with a purpose that felt as old as the stones, another to Iron-Oaks that flew with a slighter, more fussy insistence, and the third to the gates of the moon where it would thrash itself against the cold until men opened the shutters and let it in. Eddard stood at the tower window and watched them go until they were only ideas in the white. When he turned from the glass, Caitlin had come in without a sound. She had grown stealthy in her anger, which was a cleverness she had not needed when they were young. She closed the door. The click was like a needle. She did not sit. "This is the part of our marriage that others will never see," she said, "and I do not know if that is good or bad." He had never loved her more and had never been less able to tell her so without making her wince. "I will stay and stand listen," he said. "Say what you want to say. All of it." "You could have said none of it," she said, and moved past him as though walking past a piece of furniture she had once struck her shin upon. "You could have gone on as you have gone on. I would have kept going on with you. I have done it longer than you know. I have spoken gently to our boy when he asked me the question that was born in him, and I have told him that his father loves him and that the gods decide these things without asking our leave. I have sat in the sept and put a hand on my own mouth because the things I wanted to say to the maid would have made the stranger blush. You could have spared me something. The sparing would have been short," he said. "Perhaps," she said. The word held iron filings. "You have convinced yourself that this is a question of strength, of the north, of banners and blood. I do not deny that. You have persuaded yourself that you can avoid telling people everything and still be honest. You can. I married a man who could do that. But you cannot know what it is to have a boy at your table who has your face in it like a reflection in a dish and who is not mine, and to have to pick each word you say to him as if you were disarming a snare. I have learned the shape of that suffering. Now you hand me another. I hand you a boy with a better name," he said softly. "You hand me a boy who is a rival to my son," she said. "I will not lie to you about what that does to me. I would like to be one of those women in songs who always choose the high road and do not look down. But I am not. I am a woman with a house to care for. I know where my children's fingers end and where their hands begin. You have asked me to put my hand on a knife and hold it still. This will not be a knife in your hand or in Rob's," he said. "I will not see it done that way." "You will not," she agreed, and the softness of it was worse than any blade. "You may not have the leading of how these things are spoken of when the hall is not yours." He did not ask her forgiveness because he did not want to hear she could not give it. He said, "I will not send John away without giving you the courtesy that is due you. He will not leave until we have sat at table and you have said what you want to say to him and he has had a chance to answer you." "I do not know if I will take that chance," she said. "My answer is not for him." When she left, the room was cold again. He leaned his palms on the table and let his head sag between his shoulders. There were 50 small things he could do to make today look more like a day, and he did 2 of them. He sent a boy to tell the kitchen they would have the barley and bacon after all, and he told Vayan to see that a double watch was set on the gates because he did not trust the weather. Winterfell breathed that afternoon as if someone had put a bridle in its mouth. The men took to their posts as they always did. The women carried hot stones in their apron pockets. The fires stepped and leaped and slumped. Robb found Jon because brothers always find each other even when they have been taught they are something else. They walked in the covered way between the armory and the buttery where snow sifted in a thin, dry curtain through the gaps in the slanting boards. They were not boys quite, or men, and their talk was the first talk of a war that did not yet have a name. "You knew," Robb said finally. "I knew nothing until he spoke in the hall," Jon said. "I swear it." Robb scowled. He had their father's brow when he did that, which he would have liked to know and did not. "I had thought perhaps he would if he were to ask me. Tell me." "He is a lord," Jon said. "He speaks as lords do." "And you?" Robb shot back, quick with the heat that came of having once been a child who did not like the shape of a day. "What do you speak as now? A lord as well?" Jon's mouth twisted. "I speak as someone who does not enjoy knowing that there is no right way to stand." "You can step aside," Robb said, hearing his own desperation as he said it and hating that he could do nothing to smooth it from his voice. "You can go to the wall. You could have anyway. You have talked of the watch since you were tall enough to lift a wooden sword." "I thought of it," Jon said. "That was a boy's thought." "And this is a boy's game," Robb said, "because cruelty is often a thing we throw when we cannot catch anything else." He saw Jon's face go blank, which was another trick he had learned. "If you will be a Stark, be one then," Robb said. "Do not look at me like you are waiting for someone to tell you how to do it." Jon took a breath as if to speak again and made himself breathing instead. "We can be angry at each other," he said. "I can stand it. I do not know if you can." "You think I am weaker than you," Robb said, with something like amusement in it for a second because he had never thought anyone could be soft on him and say it. "Gods. No," Jon said. "Only that you are used to my being someone you can shove. You cannot do that now. You will have to put your shoulder into bigger things." Robb had the sense to not hit him then. He would have liked to. The memory of their father's eyes on them in the yard stopped him. He nodded instead and then nodded again because once had not been enough. "Do not ask me to smile for you," he said. "Do not make me pretend." "I won't," Jon said. He opened his mouth again and said the thing he had not wanted to say. "I will go away, for a while, to the Vale. He thinks it is best." Robb's first burst of injured laughter surprised them both. "To the Vale," he said, as if the map were a joke. "Will you take the high road? Will you fly? You will not be here, and I will be left to explain to anyone who thinks my face is an invitation to ask questions." "Very well. Go. Learn your bronze manners." "Robb," Jon said, and for a moment, both of them were small again, dragging a doll's head on a string to make Ghost chase it, elbows bruised from crawling under tables. Then the moment shut like a door. Supper that night was a ceremony that pretended not to be. The bacon fat had cooled on the barley in a way that made it shine. Old Nan whispered to Rickon a story about a trout who swallowed something too big for him because he had not learned what hunger was, and Rickon looked sideways at Jon as if considering if the story loved him or laughed at him. Sansa held her spoon as if the maiden herself watched her and said nothing at all. Arya crept her foot along the rushes until it touched the bare ankle of the servant girl who had set the platter and waited until the girl started and nearly dropped a cup, then giggled silently into Nymeria's fur. Catelyn spoke first about a cask of ale they had not known they had, and Eddard pretended to humor her because that was what they did when the children were watching. The men of the household ate and drank and glanced like sparrows. Jory had the sense to tell a story about a horse that had refused to drink and then relieved itself in Lord Hornwood's hall, which won him a few honest laughs and took some air from the room. It did not set the table upright again. After, Eddard and Robb went to the armory because the only thing that made sense to do after having your life knocked out of place is to put something in a place where it belongs. The blades lay in their racks like the cold embroidery of some patient, deadly woman. Rob picked one up and set it down with care and said, "What is the Vale to us?" "It is a castle built on a sky," Eddard said. "It is a line of mountains that teach men to be stubborn without being fools. It is a place where boys learn to climb and learn to fall. It is where I learned to become a man without my father. It is where I learned that men who are not Stark still make good wine. It is where I found my best friend in a war." Rob did not pretend he did not hear the second line inside those words. "You would send him to your friend." "Jon Arryn is dead," Eddard said, and the bleakness in the statement made the walls of the armory look closer. "I would send him to the men who remember what that name meant." Rob ran his hand along a hilt. "Lord Yon," he said. "Boys learn names as if they were ciphers to unlock men. Lady Waynwood, the Royces, and Nestor at the gates," Eddard said. "He looks like a man who has borrowed a lord's clothes sometimes. He behaves like one who knows who the clothes belong to. Men like that are the right sort for a young man to watch. They rise when it is necessary and sit when it is wise. I would have you watch them too. You will have to." Rob looked at him with the appealing brutality of a son. "Do you regret me?" he asked. "Because if you do, I would rather you. I wanted you from before you were imaginable," Eddard said. "I would die 100 times to have one more of your childhood days. Do not ask me these things today. I do not have the skill to answer them without cutting us both." Rob nodded. "I will not go to my mother," he said, quietly this time, and the quiet was a thing that earned respect. "Not tonight. I will say something that will feed what I cannot starve in her. I will go to Jory and ask him to drill me until my arms do not wish to hold me up. In the morning I will find you and I will ask you to do it again. It will not be enough. It will be what we can do," Eddard said. The small hours were his. He spent them in the solar with the maps and the lamp and the memory that moved in him like a fox in the snow, light, cautious, quick through thickets that were nothing to it. At times he lifted one of the little carved men that stood along the table's edge, wolf, mountain, trout, and moved it a finger's breadth. He left the lion where it was, because pride thrives best when it is not touched. He drew a line on the map that was not truly there, a bridge from Winterfell through the neck to the mountains of the moon, a path that was not a road but a will. He left a space over the Eyrie where the paper made a hollow sound when he pushed his fingernail into it. Crows talk in the night the way women do the morning after something has moved a household's furniture, and the castle heard them. When he rose from the table at last, the lamp had burned low and the room had the brittle chiming silence that comes when a flame makes a fool of itself and faints. He went to the window and pushed it open. The night slapped him. The stars were as sharp as cloves. He saw no movement in the yard but the slow scrape of a man's shadow on the wall, and the quick small glide of ghost along the snow's edge. Jon stood by the well with his hands folded and his head lowered, as if the well might speak to him if he made himself small enough not to frighten it. Eddard turned away. He had no right to watch his son's prayers. He never had. In the morning, the snow had taken a break from falling to remind them what the world looked like with all its edges lit and burnished. The messages were away already. Luwin had sent word to the glass gardens to stoke the fires higher. The second beds of winter greens did not like the weather's tricks. Mikken was in the yard when Eddard went down, speaking softly to a blade he shaped as if it could be coaxed into a better beauty. "My lord," he said without stopping his work, "because in the north you did not stop work to greet a man unless you had nothing else to do." "How does your work go?" Eddard asked, and let himself be comforted by the blacksmith's indignation. Mikken had never found anything good enough to be left alone. He watched until the noise of hooves at the gate lifted his head. A sentry's cry, "Rider!" and then again, not out of fear but because the day took a note and liked the way it sounded. The gate rolled wide enough to admit one man, and the man rode in under the hard gaze of the portcullis with his scarf stiff with frost and his beard bristling white with it. He slid out of the saddle with a sound like ice cracking and went down to one knee, not because he had to but because he wanted to be polite with his cold bones. "From the south," he said, and showed the broken blue feather at his throat that marked him as a runner from the east. From the Vale. Already, Luwin murmured, appearing with a speed that seemed to have not passed through any doors. Gods bless the birds when they are eager. The man's hands shook as he untied the leather from his breast. He put the tube into Luwin's hands. Runestone, he said. Lord Yon. Eddard did not wait for ceremony. He broke the black wax with the direwolf and unrolled the parchment while Luwin amendingly rubbed 2 fingers down the left edge to ease its stiffness. Yon Royce's hand was as strong as his voice. There was nothing of a courtier in the letters. They did not bend. Eddard of Winterfell, the letter said, and Eddard felt the simplicity of that name as a kindness. My lord, I will not preach bronze at you. You were a boy here and wore the sky easily. I have no quarrel with your judgment of the boy I saw here when Robert was not yet king, and when our tables were higher for want of carpenters. If you will name a son of your house as your heir, I will stand next to that naming when you ask me to in open country, and if there are men in the Vale who say that a bastard is always a bastard, they will say it on the other side of me. If the king denies you in his cups or in his humor, the Vale will not. If you wish to send the boy to me for a year to harden his feet on stone and learn what he needs to from iron and from the way the wind moves when mountains are near, I will do it and seek no coin of you except that you will let me send you mine when my day comes. Give my respects to your lady, with whom I have not had the pleasure and with whom I do not think I would exchange hunting stories, and give your boy Rob a horse with the sense not to break his neck. Bring your banners in the spring if the road is clear. Keep them if it is not. That is plain, Luwin said. It is, Eddard agreed, and breathed out into the cold, and made a little cloud that looked like happiness if you were too far away to see anything clearly. Shall we tell? Luwin began, and Eddard was already moving. He found John in the yard with Ghost beside him and told him in 2 sentences what Yon Royce had said. He watched the words strike him like stones dropped into a pool. Rings went out from each one and touched shores they had not expected to touch. A year, John said. If it suits, Eddard said. If you want it. When do we leave? John asked, with something that was not eagerness but wanted to dress itself as eagerness. When the weather allows, when the letters go out, when we have made peace with those who will not be made peace with, Eddard said. When your brothers have stopped looking at you as if they do not know whether to ask you for a favor or a fight. When your lady is done with me. John nodded. I will tell Arya, he said. She will want to hear it from me. She will, Eddard said. It pleased him that John knew that without being told. It made his decision live again with less pain in it. Letters had their way of spreading the meaning of a thing beyond anyone's intention, like blood through water. Eddard's messenger reached Ironokes and came back slower than he went because Anya Wainwood had not trusted other hands to write down the words she meant. They were polite and practical, and full of the sort of old, stout sense that did not go out of fashion even when fashions were the only thing men cared to speak of. He read them in the solar, with Catelyn standing and not sitting to hear. She listened with her head tipped so slightly to one side that a man who did not know her would have thought she was amused. I have a grandson, she wrote, who thinks highly of his own seat and will need to see that a lord sits at table beside him whose house is older than his opinions. I will stand where Lord Yon stands when it is needful. I will contradict him when standing in line does no good. If your boy will learn to read the faces of women who run little houses that mean more to the big ones than the big ones remember, send him to me in the summer. Women, Catelyn said softly, and Eddard could not tell whether there was vinegar in it or something sweet. She invites your son to learn at her knee. He will learn things from iron and from women, Eddard said. I do not think one weakens the other. Nor do I, Catelyn said. I merely wondered if you would say it. The answer from the gates of the moon carried a smudge on the bottom left where some careless hand had touched the sealing wax before it had set. Nestor Royce's seal was blunt. His words were full of loyalty like flour in bread. We keep the bloody gate, he wrote. We keep the road. There are men in the high places who would not see the eyrie close to you. I am one. If you would have the boy, I will put him where the mountain can see him and teach him to bow to it when bowing makes a spine lasting rather than bending it. Between the sending of the ravens and the replies, another letter had come as cold as the wind that brought it. Lisa, written with a hand that pressed too hard and gave itself away in flourishes. It had come unasked, which meant other birds had been busy in other sky. Eddard read it without Lewin and folded it and set it down and did not speak of it at supper. The words lay in his head like ice floes. She had named him Dear Brother in the first line, and then Dear in the next, and then in the third line had written of knives under silk. She had written that John Arryn did not die of his own sickness, which the city named dust, but of a hand that wished him dead for reasons that had nothing to do with old men's comfort and everything to do with what children inherit. She had written him Do not go south, which the letter made into a command by repeating it. She had not asked him anything about the north. She had not mentioned his naming. She had written only for herself. It was Lisa's way. He carried that letter into the Godswood and set it down where the ice had thickened over the pool. He did not let it slide toward the hole where the water still moved. If there is a knife there, I will look at it, he told the red face who did not care about knives. But I will not drag my house that way to save my skin. I will not make my sons play at war in a city where men forget their own names. He left the letter on the ice. It would be swallowed when the weather turned soft, or forgotten when the winter went on. If a serving boy found it there after the thaw and used it to start a fire, then that would be one less letter in the world. Cold days make clarity possible. He used them. He spoke with Rob each morning and in the afternoon again with John, as if words were armor and the hours of the day were the straps and the buckles that held them on. He stood with Caitlin each night, sometimes at the fire, sometimes on the cold window seat in their chamber where the frost grew ferns. They did not repeat themselves. That was their agreement, though they had not formed it in speech. They would not rehearse the same hurts until they thought them truths. She told him once without tears that she had dreamed of the river at Riverrun and wading into it and finding that the water was so cold it burned her feet and cooled her in the same breath. He said he had dreamed of the Eyrie and climbing alone in the night on the steps that were too shallow for a grown man. He did not say he dreamed of Lyanna lying on a hard bed with her hair loose and her lips dry and her eyes very clear because he had run out of courage some time after he had married and did not dare do certain brave things anymore. Arya found John in the stables and threw herself at him the way she did at anyone she really loved, like a puppy who has seen its master after a day alone. He swayed and caught her and backed up until his spine met a post and the whole stable seemed to lean away from the deep boy smell that rose from him and the horses. "You're going away," she said into his chest. "For a while," he said into her hair, which smelled of dogs and a little of the tallow varnish she had broken and tried to put back. "I will come back. You always say that," she said, and pulled back and looked into his face, fierce with the ferocity of someone whose tenderness is most tender where it is most hidden. "Take me with you." He laughed then, which had always been the thing she liked best about him, because his laughter did not wound anyone to make itself large. "You would be sent home before you got as far as the first tower. You would say the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong woman and the roof would fall in." "Sansa could go," Arya said, because it had to be said. "She could curtsy in a storm." "Sansa could go," Jon allowed. "She could learn all the rules I will forget. But I am not taking Sansa either. I am not taking anyone. I want to go and be no one for a while." "You never could be no one," Arya said, and it was a prophecy as light and as heavy as a girl's breath in winter. Sansa heard last because Sansa had trained herself to hear last, fearing always that the first hearing would be wrong and she would have been foolish in front of eyes that counted. She heard as if she were listening to a song whose words she did not yet know, and she smoothed a pleat in her gown and lifted her chin when Jon told her because it was the right thing to do. "You will bring me a favor from a tourney in the Vale," she said, and Jon's face softened because she had asked something that mattered to her more than to him. "And you will remember what I told you about the way to stand when you are presented to a lady, and you will not forget that some men bow differently to different women and you should not guess which you should watch." "I will remember," Jon promised, and Sansa, if she had been honest, would have admitted that she would have preferred he be slightly foolish in one of those ways that would be charming later. She kissed him on both cheeks, which surprised him and made him blush, which warmed her in a way that frightened her with its sweetness. The castle had its own ailing. Bran took to climbing more than ever, the way boys do when they feel floors shifting beneath them. He went up where the shape of things stayed the same, where air belonged to the sky, not to men's nonsense. Rickon had a small fever that came at night and went at dawn, and old Nan told Caitlin it was nothing, and Caitlin counted his breaths anyway as he slept. Theon grew restless as a dog who knows he will be taken out and cannot bear another hour under the table. He walked along the wall and looked south, always south, as if something there owed him something. One morning the hooves at the gate were many and not one, and the cry came from the tower as if it had been waiting. The king comes! And the winter air that had been theirs alone filled with the mixed scent of a moving court. Hot horse, cold iron, perfume that insisted on itself like a shout in a quiet church, the relieved laughter of men who had made hard miles, the complicated arrangement of banners that tried to tell you the whole of what you were about to see in the earliest possible instant. The wolves were mad with excitement until the first Lannister coat swung into the yard, and then they heard whatever wolves hear and went still. Eddard had known the sound of that voice once, and he knew it still. Robert's laugh slanted over the stone and shook a bit of snow from a ledge to make a sunbright small fall. He had a face like a bell that had been rung too often and too hard. He dismounted with a groan that he made into a roar. There were courtesies to be done, and they did them. Caitlin curtsied with every inch of her breeding, and Robert bent to kiss her cheek. And Eddard saw Caitlin's eyes flicker down and away as she caught the smell of the road and the ale and the iron that never quite left a fighting man's breath. Even a fighting man who had not fought a true fight in a long time. The queen watched from her horse as if she were above snow itself, which was a feat the dwarf glanced everywhere at once except at the thing he wanted most to see, which was the wall he could not quite reach without help. The girl with hair like honey and a face like a coin that has been rubbed by too many fingers smiled with the exact smile she had been taught. Robert opened with no preface at all. "Your hall," he declared, "smells the same as it did when we were boys." He clapped Eddard's shoulder hard enough that the bones under the skin remembered what it was to ache.
Guts, Ned.
"Look at you." He lowered his voice a fraction, the way a big man sometimes does when he is too fond to be careful. "Have you fattened on me? You have eaten enough for both of us," Eddard said, because this was the way their words fit. He felt the shape of it in his mouth and was surprised by how much he wanted to cry. They went into the hall, moving the way men do when one man is king and the other one is not, which is to say carefully. Jests were made because someone had to cross that space with laughter first, or else all their old affection would get trapped in the rafters and become a bird that would not come down to the table. Men like Robert and Eddard had learned to handle tenderness with jokes. The formalities rang out. Cups were lifted. Torches flared and hissed. The king ate and drank as if he were not aware of the eyes on his hands and mouth and the great weight of them. And if he was aware, he pretended not to be. It did not take long, of course, for the talk to turn into what had wrapped itself around the house. Robert played the game that their friendship had always played. He said, "I have business to ask of you, and I hope you will not make me beg," which was his way of saying that he intended to take what he intended to take. He spoke of a hand dead in the night, of the need of a friend to set his shoulders under his king's arms and get them moving again. He made grief into a gesture, broad and brief, like a man throwing something to a dog. "Jon Arryn is gone," he said. "I need you." Eddard said the words he had rehearsed only in his silence. "I will not go south as your hand. Not now. Not this year." The sound in the hall tightened and then did not. Robert's eyes widened like a man seeing a storm crest on him from a clear day. "You what?" "I will not go," Eddard said calmly. "There are things here that need finishing." Robert stared. "What in the seven hells could be so important in this cold castle of yours that you would refuse me?" Eddard did not say what he could not say. He said instead, I'll help you another way. I will name a man in my stead who will help you, if you wish it." "Stannis would be better." "Stannis?" Robert repeated, making the name into a bitter rind and peeling it with his teeth. "Is a fish with legs. He is virtue without wine. He is a book with arms." He shook his head and grinned with the effort of making light. "What could be more important than the needs of the realm, you stiff-necked son of the snow?" Eddard's gaze went to Lisa's letter as if it hung in the air before him. To the small swelling of baby flesh under Caitlyn's gown, the winter rob was in her. To John's face, the day the boy had named Ghost the way he had. "The needs of this realm," he said, choosing every word, feeling how much weight it could bear. "I will be blunt, as I often am with you, Robert. A realm is not only the bit that stretches from your chair to your cup. There is a realm up here too. I will keep it. You should be glad of it. I have named an heir." "You what?" Robert said again, and the second time he laughed because what else could he do?
Ned.
"You are not old enough to speak of this as if we had come to counting our teeth in our cups." "I am old enough to see winter," Eddard said drily. "I am old enough to feel it when I set my hand on a stone in the morning. Listen, and do not take offense at what is not meant as offense. I will name a boy of my blood to hold Winterfell when I am gone. I will ask you to sign letters that give him a true name, as a king does when he wishes to make right what the world did wrong at the start. He is John." Robert's smile went away slowly. He had always been slow to anger when he was with Eddard. He had to remember how to be angry in such company. "You intend to name the bastard," he said carefully. "I intend to name my son," Eddard said. "You have a son," Robert said. "You have a dozen." They look at you across the table. Does your lady nod at this? Or does she have to tie her jaw closed with a scarf at night to keep from telling you how a house works? "She bears it," Eddard said. "She does not pretend to like it because she is decent." Robert stared at him a long time, and then the face he wore for courts and councils crumbled and something older showed. "You always were the most stubborn man I ever beat," he said, "and the most stubborn man who ever beat me." "You did not beat me," Eddard said. "I did," Robert said, and the ghost of their fisted matches in the yard came and stood between them and grinned. "Once." He drew a breath and let it out again. "Very well then. We will talk of this in a room that does not have men with their ears in their cups. We will drink there, and one of us will be persuaded. If it is me, I will set my hand to your paper and make your boy into a lord. If it is you, you will come south and stand where I put you and do what I tell you." "It will not be me," Eddard said, with a sudden grin that shook loose a little of the fear inside him. "Not this time." Robert clapped him again, this time gently, and turned away roaring to see the wolves and to make his queen's mouth as thin as a blade without cutting her. That night, after the feast, when the castle had been worn out by the work of hosting and even the cold had sat down to rest its feet, Eddard sat with the king and only a handful of others in a smaller, older room where the stone felt closer and the fire seemed more committed. He put the petition on the table as if it were a piece of bread. Robert picked it up and held it to the light, squinting because he had never loved letters. "Stark," he said, with affection that sounded like a curse. "You will make my sister kill me with her eyes when she reads this. You will make my council tear their hair. You will make songs in the north about how a man can be king without ever leaving his chair." "I will settle for our living," Eddard said. "If your council would rather cry in their chairs than do the realm's work, you should come hunt in the neck with me and let them wring their hands in the capital until their knuckles are smooth." Robert bellowed his delight because he liked a friend who did not fear him in private. "Give me the seal," he commanded, and Eddard slid the sticks and the clay across. Luwin had set them in a small neat box as if he had known this moment was a horse that would show at a gate and not at another. Robert pressed the stag into the red wax and blew on it like a child. "There," he said, pounding it with the heel of his hand in faint parody of a king's arrogance. "There. Jon Snow, Jon Stark. I would have done it years ago if you had asked me. Gods save us both from your sense of honor." "God save us both," Eddard said, and took the papers back and felt the weight shift on the table as if all the cups had filled at once. The queen's eyes, when she eventually read, were 2 pieces of the wall itself. Peter Baelish's mouth made the shape of a man who had just found an unexpected coin in the dust. Varys fluttered his hands and found his places in the air to lay his smiles. Stannis's mouth thinned from wherever he was, seeing that a principal had been wounded. Even if it was a principal, he would not have defended for a man he did not love. The North's men, when they came and heard, reacted as they would have to a gust of wind that pulled at cloaks and lifted hats. Some laughed and held their heads. Some swore and reached to hold something down that had never been theirs. Some asked what the wind intended and took out their knives to cut some leather and make it fit better. The Umbers said they would follow any man who could lift their ale. The Manderleys said that nothing of any consequence ever happened that was not written, and they waited to read. The Boltons said acid things in private and measured in public. The Karstarks sent a handsome horse and a shy letter and an assurance. The Glovers gripped hands and nodded. Lady Meage Mormont wrote back in a sure hand that it was proper to name a man for the life he had lived in a house and not for a law that had never seen a winter. When Lord Yohn's answer to the second letter came, it was a different sort. Spoke details. It named a day. It said, "We will meet in the high hall at the gates and drink together and say words that say what they mean. If a man has a sword to show, let him leave it with the guards and bring an honest tongue in his head instead." It said, "I am old." It said, "I am not done." The road south to the Vale was a road that had made its own stories about the men who had used it. Merchants who had counted coins between finger and thumb to the beat of their mules' hooves. Soldiers who had learned which bend in the path could be ridden two abreast and which meant death if you tried. Women who had kept their shawls over their heads in the wind and laughed anyway because the sky was too beautiful to leave it alone. Eddard had ridden it as a boy with Benjen and Brandon, and then as a man with Robert. He had never done it as a father with a son who was leaving him by his own command. The first day the path was soft enough for a horse to find his footing without freezing. Eddard set his boots in the stirrups and rode out with John and a small party chosen more for their steadiness than their speed. They took Jory, and Theon came hard on their heels before anyone told him to go back. And Eddard let the boy come because the road would teach him something it could not teach him in the yard. Ghost and Grey Wind formed the strange company of wolves that only the Starks could make out of a world that had no place for wolves, and they ran ahead when it pleased them and slipped back when it did not. They reached the neck in a light that looked like music. The air stirred with the breath of some animal too large to be seen all at once. Marsh made men listen. Eddard liked the way sound seemed to come sooner than sight. It told him he was in a part of the world where most men did not like to go, and that had always soothed him in a way he had never explained to Caitlin because she had lived in a place where the river takes men where they are going without asking them any questions. They camped the second night under a stand of pines that had no business standing where they were, and Jory told a story about a boy who thought he could run faster than a fox and learned that the thing you chase is sometimes chasing you. Theon rolled his eyes. John listened as he always had, with the patience of someone who has had good things taken from him and learned that patience saves some of them when nothing else can. Eddard lay under his blanket and watched the dark canvas of the sky through the needles. The wolves snorted in their sleep. Ghost's breath plumed and vanished. He wondered what would happen when he was gone and who would bring the winter fires in, who would say to the cook that the salt needed more salt, who would make Robb look at his own temper through someone else's eyes. The high road to the Vale wound like a conversation you start at table and finish in the yard. Men went single file and then found places where two could ride side by side for a few steps and use them to say the thing that cannot be said when you are behind or ahead. They met a party coming down. A fat merchant who had learned fear only recently, with guards whose eyes moved in the quick, jerky way of dogs after a beating. The merchant told them with too many words about a clan that had come down from the heights and wriggled through like frogs from a slit and laughed at his gold and tried to take his mules and told him to sing for them because they had grown bored with killing. Jory said, "We will pass today and they will pass another day. There is enough sky for both." The merchant did not hear him because he had never learned to hear anything that did not shake a coin from a purse. They climbed until the air made their noses sting and their breath looked beautiful. The towers of the lower gates showed themselves through a break in the cloud like teeth in a grin. Nestor Royce met them under the stone arch when they came, a big-shouldered man in a cloak like gray water, and he took Eddard's hand as if he had been told not to and had decided to do it anyway. "My lord," he said, "my house, my gates, my bread, my wine, and your friendship," Eddard said, and heard the stern laugh Yohn would have made if he had been there to approve of the ceremony and attach to it as much scorn as he liked. They ate in the high hall with the windows all a frost of breath, and the wine that Nestor served had the honest heart of a grape that had lived through fewer winters than they had. Lord Yohn arrived on the third day, and when he took John's measure with eyes that had been trained by a lifetime of metal and mountain, he nodded once, almost imperceptibly, like a man who has woken to discover that one of his teeth has stopped aching. "You will do," he said, and motioned John to his left hand. Anya Wainwood came with grandchildren like small birds on a branch and a daughter-in-law whose thin mouth told a better story than her carefully sweet greeting did. She introduced John to a boy whose cheeks had not yet learned to shave and told him, "This one thinks he is the next thing that will happen to the world. Show him the view when he is not watching those who watch him." John bowed and smiled and earned himself a surprised twitch of approval. Eddard watched Ghost shadow John in the hall and thought of how men teach their animals even when they think it goes the other way. They spoke without flourish. It was not the time for flourish. Eddard laid down all his words as if he were setting stones for a causeway across a marsh, and the others did the same. They did not count enemies. They spoke of snow and iron, and harvest follows spring only when the plows are pulled correctly by men whose backs have been taught to bend in the right place. They did not swear oaths with high-sounding names. They said, "I will hold the pass a week longer than is comfortable, and I will send 5 men I can ill afford, and if I see a raven, I will light a fire, and if the weather sits on my roof and will not go, I will send a boy in a hat." It was the sort of politicking that the men in the South who dressed their words in ribbons would have misunderstood completely and laughed at. It would save their houses when the Southern men sent for aid and found they were too far away from anything that did not bow to a crown. When the days at the gates were done, and John had stood with his back straight and his mouth set and his eyes moving and had made 2 small mistakes Anya Wainwood had quietly corrected with the crook of a finger, and Yon had shown him the old bronze blade that lay always where he could see it when he tried to make a decision, Eddard put his hand on his son's shoulder and squeezed. "You will stay," he said. "Winter will teach you some things. You will teach yourself some. Listen to your wolf. Listen to the mountains. Listen to Lady Wainwood. She knows what most men do not know and cannot admit that she knows." John swallowed. "And you?" "I will take the easier road," Eddard said softly, meaning the road back to his hard house. "And I will tell your brother there is work for him he can do. And I will tell your mother." He did not finish. He let the silence stand between them like a tree. He had planted it. He had to water it. He was a gardener who hated the shape of the vine and loved the fruit. "We will see each other again before the year is done," he said, and did not dress the sentence in big clothes. John nodded for answer. He lowered his head and set his brow against the old leather of Eddard's glove for a heartbeat, and then lifted it and went to Yon Royce and bent and had the good sense not to say anything at all. Eddard rode north with Jory and Theon in a world that had learned a new shape in his absence and did not know if it obliged him. They crossed the high places to find that messages had gone faster than horses, as they always do. He learned on a road that looked as if it were made of bone that the Queen had invited herself into his weirwood and had said things there to hiss at the silence and had found no one to answer. He learned that Robert had put his hand on the wolf again and had slept a sleep that made him dream of boars and women he had never known by names he had not forgotten. He learned that Rob had found a way to be furious that did not involve breaking anything that could not be mended. He learned that Caitlin had been seen on the wall in a cloak with the hood up and her cheek showing white, that she had not fallen, that she had not asked the gods to do her any favors, that she had slept and eaten and set 6 different men to 6 different tasks with more mercy than they deserved and more sense than they expected. He met the first snow squall of the trip back with his head lowered and his scarf up, and his mind felt as if it were being pressed between 2 pieces of cold iron. He liked the feeling. It was honest. He came in sight of Winterfell through a curtain of white that made the stones look as if a giant hand had blown flour across them to see where the cracks would show. The gate rose and the wolves came, and Rob stood in the yard when he came through, looking up with his jaw steady and his hands bare though the cold made their small bones ache. Eddard swung down stiffly and put his hands on his son's shoulders. He did not ask if the boy had behaved when he was gone. He asked instead, "What have you done?" Rob swallowed. "I went to Ser Roderick and asked him to teach me how to move men in the yard as if they were stones on a board. I went to the stables and watched Hote mend a girth and kept my mouth shut while he spoke. I asked your lady if she would have me sit with her when she settles small quarrels. I told Theon to stop trying to make me laugh when my teeth hurt. He stopped and shook his head. I did not speak well to Bran when he cried in the night. I told him to stop and that made him cry harder. I brought him a story and an apple afterward. It did not undo it. No, Eddard said. Things do not undo. He pressed his son's shoulder with his fingers. Your brother is in the Vale. He will come back with mountains in his head that you do not have. You will have other things. Learn what they are. Robb nodded. I will not forgive him yet, he said, and there was pity in the way he said it for both of them. But I will remember that I love him. That is enough, Eddard said. He climbed to the Godswood, because the habit of his heart is a road he takes even when he has missed his turning. Snow lay on the branches as if the tree had been dressed for some quiet wedding. He touched the bark. He thought he had done something that would see his houses through years that other houses would not survive. He thought he had brought something old back into the world, something that a mountain and a pine and a wolf understood even when men forgot it. He thought he had guaranteed that his own grave would be dug in peace. He did not know. Men never know, and when they do, it is too late to keep anything from happening. He was content not to know for a moment. He stood under the white and red and let the wind have his face. And in the Vale, where the dawn sometimes breaks twice because of the way it climbs the mountains, John woke in a bed that did not smell of Winterfell and listened to the sound of men moving in a keep that had a different idea of silence than the one he had grown used to. He thought of Robb and Arya, and the way his lady had looked through him to keep from looking at him at all, and the way Lord Yon had said you will do as if it was the end of a sentence that had begun before John was born. He felt Ghost's heart beat against his hand, slow and sure. He sat up and looked through the narrow slat of a W. Indo to where the sky was learning to be morning again. He smiled a little without knowing he had done it. The world was too large to be stayed by a boy's grief or a man's pride. That did not mean it was indifferent. It meant only that one must put one's feet where the stones were and begin finding the way. South of him, beyond all his hearing, the king reached for his cup with a hand that had not yet begun to shake, and the queen watched him and did not move. East of him, a pale-haired girl under a foreign sky lifted her face to a brightness she had been told to fear and did not. North of him, the wind carried in it the faint sharpness that makes men close their doors and look to their cellars and wonder if they have put by enough. In every hall and hut between, men woke and stood and did what men do. Cut wood, mended straps, fed goats, held each other when the dreams were bad and let go when the day called them. Winterfell settled into the pattern of days that look from the outside like sameness and from the inside like all the small achievements that make a place last. Catelyn sat in the solar that had once been Eddard's father's and settled disputes that would have seemed small to a man in King's Landing and felt large enough to those who had to get up in the morning and face the neighbor whose dog had killed their hens. Robb rode to the crofters who had cut more wood than they were allowed and fined them in barley because they had no coin. Arya learned to stitch a hem and tore it out again because it insulted her, then learned a way to tie a knot that would not slip when a boy grabbed the wrist it was tied around. Sansa walked with Lady through the blankets of cold and learned which men's eyes fell when she looked at them and which went bright, and she learned what both things meant. Bran climbed and learned something older than caution, and then unlearned it and learned it again. He did not fall. Theon grinned at a girl who could have done better and made her laugh and then made her regret him and then did not understand that he had. Jory set the watches and kept two boys from killing each other over a pair of boots. Mikken cursed a blade and made it perfect. Ravens came and went, pecking the world into a map that made sense. Letters went out from Winterfell and came in again. Men from the Dreadfort and the Rills and Bear Island came to hear a lord say something that would make what they had been thinking sound like sense in their own mouths. Manderly sent a fish with his letter that had been salted with a sort of artistry that made Eddard suspect he had used the good salt, and the letter itself politely agreed to what everyone who wanted to survive would have agreed to in any case. Lord Bolton sent a man with a face like a sleet squall and a message that said words that were on the edge of agreement and asked that certain assurances be made. Eddard sent back a list of those assurances, with a little space beside each one where a man's initials could sit. Lady Mormont's second letter contained no compliments and no salutes. She said only, "The bear does not lay down in winter," and Eddard made a mark on the map that made him sleep better that night. At the Eyrie, where Lisa peered through the glass at the world the way a cat looks out under a door at a hall it does not intend to visit, the news that the North had set its house in a peculiar but steady way reached her and did not find purchase. She wrote a letter with a dry pen and then, just before the ink fell, tore the page and started another, and then another. When she sent one at last, it was to herself. Peter watched through lashes that had won him lives and money. His mouth curled as if at a joke told only to him. When wolves and mountains breed, he told the queen later in a room scented with something imported and expensive. They make sounds no one in the city understands. The queen did not answer. She had started in her mind to count the ways a name with the right syllables could be turned into a knife. She had time. John learned in the Vale that there were men who had found ways to make bronze sing. And he learned that the worst thing a boy could bring to a sparring ring was fear of what he would look like when he lost. He learned the names of stones that grew like living things out of the mountain and the paths that goats took as if their mothers had drawn the map. He learned that a woman with grandchildren could see through him as if he were a well in summer and could make him blush with a look when he made a mistake she had invented 40 years ago and forgotten. He learned to hold his tongue in a way that had nothing to do with shame and everything to do with courtesy that asked for consideration and not for obedience. He stood with Jon Royce at the gates one day, looking up at the ridges of white and gray stacked against the sky, and Jon said without looking at him, "There are men who wear their names the way you wear a cloak. They take it off when it is hot. There are other men who are their names and would be naked without them. You will have to decide which you are. If you choose the second, you will never be quite warm again. If you choose the first, you will freeze to death and not know why." John said nothing, and the older man grunted, "You will do." When the year turned, it did not make triumph out of what they had done. It made the sort of quiet that men who care about words do not notice, but men who care about roofs do. It gave them a long cold and a short open water. It gave them fewer raids and more hungry mouths in the hills. It gave Eddard's house the work it had set for itself and a little respite to do it. It gave Caitlin a day when she stood in the God's Wood with a scarf around her throat and found that she could look at the carved face and not feel it mocking her with its immobility. It gave Rob a morning when he looked at his brother's empty place at table and did not first feel anger BU. T instead felt weary, forgiving sorrow that had no voice. It gave Sansa a week during which she wrote 4 letters to the Vale and tore them up because she had told her mother she would not write to John until he wrote first. And then at last she wrote one to Lady Waynwood, very proper, asking her whether certain colors were thought vain there. It gave Arya a scrap of leather to tie around her wrist that would lay flat and not catch in things when she climbed. It gave Bran a dream that was full of wings. It gave Theon a poem in a scrawl to a girl who had already burned 3. The snow receded unevenly. Men with faces like walnuts came to the hall with their caps in hands that had not had gloves all winter and asked if they might have seed. And Eddard said yes and knew that some of it would be eaten. And he said yes anyway because this was how houses keep houses. Dawn that had not lasted long in the deepest days began to linger, like a guest who had decided to stay for a second cup. Eddard said to Caitlin one night, "We will bring him back before the harvest. He will have had enough of mountains. He will need to learn how grain speaks." Caitlin did not contest it. She did not agree. She set the lamp between them on the windowsill where the cold breathed through the crack. The last small thing before the next large thing showed itself, as it always does, in the shape of an odd bird landing out of season. It was a little gray messenger from Gulltown as crisp as a coin, and it brought with it something that smelled like the sea, the iron tang of harbor water and the rot beneath it full of living things. Vayenpool brought the letter in and laid it on the table between cups black with wine and the remains of a barley loaf. Eddard broke the seal and read quietly, and Caitlin read his face. "What storm?" she asked. "Gulltown," he said. "Lord Grafton writes to say that there is a motion on the docks and words in the winehouses. The men who speak the hardest do not have the hands of dockmen. There is money moving in strings that do not end in the Vale." He looked up at her. "Little birds have flown in from the capital," he said, and the disgust in his voice was for the way that city moved like a man whose feet never truly touched ground. "They talk of a hand who will not come when the king calls. They talk of a bastard boy given a good name. They talk of old bronze making old alliances. They talk of a queen with her hair combed in a mirror with a gold frame." Caitlin's mouth tightened. "They will test you. They will test the rope we have tied between us and the mountains," Eddard said. They will pull at it and see if it unravels. Caitlin lifted her chin. Then let us see if it does, she said, with the dangerous pride of a woman who has born and raised wolves. You wanted a world where your sons were not ashamed to live under one roof. You have it. Now let it stand wind. Eddard took up the quill and wrote again to the men of the Vale, to Yon and Anya and Nestor, to the men of his own north, to Wyman and to Lord Bolton and to Barbary Dustin with her hard clever eyes, to Lady Meage on her island. He wrote to the king to say that he hoped his friend's health was good, and that the last boar had not had too many teeth. He wrote to Lisa to say, simply, that the mountain clans had moved and would she, for once, look out her windows and see men instead of ghosts. He wrote until the light failed and the fire dropped to cinders and Caitlin lit another lamp and then another, and he did not feel the stiffness in his neck until the last letter had been pressed and sanded and laid aside. On the first of the thawing days, when men in the yard did not have to pick ice out of their mustaches before they could speak, Eddard set his foot into the stirrup again and turned south with Rob at his side this time and a double handful of men. He did not take Theon, who sulked and said things to the air that were wicked and, at their core, mere and thin. He did not take Arya, who asked with all the insolence of someone who had not yet learned what distance means. He took only those he needed. They rode with the scent of old snow in their nostrils, and they rode because the world does not allow houses to become ideas for long. It knocks on the door with hands like traitors and wolves and kings alike. It demands to be answered. They went to meet the sea they could smell in a letter that had crossed the mountains and the marsh and the dark woods and had arrived dry. They went to meet bronze with iron and iron with words and words with the thing beyond words that makes men stand when they would sit. Winterfell watched them go as it always did, with the stillness of stone that knows more of men's comings and goings than men do. The wolves ran with them to the edge and then turned back because this was not their road. Caitlin climbed the wall and stood with her hand on the unresponsive stone and watched until they were a thread between white and brown, and then she watched a while longer until even the idea of them had been taken by the sky. Then she went down and sent for Bran and Sansa and Arya and Rickon, and she sat and asked each of them to tell her a story, and she did not correct even the parts that were wrong. And in the Vale, Jon woke before the light because he had learned that mornings teach better than men. He put his hand on Ghost's head and felt the answering warmth, and he went out into a hall that smelled, as it always did, of oil and steel and the crushed, old scent of mountain air that the stones had absorbed and would never give back. He took up a practiced sword and went to the yard and swung it, silently at first, then with the rhythm that a man makes when he has remembered his own body. Yon Royce came and watched and did not say anything. Anya Wainwood's boy came and tried to make a joke and found there was no breath for it. The sky clung to the ridge like a lover, and then, with a sigh, CL. In bed, he would climb too. He would learn how to stand. He would remember how to bend when things that were stronger than he was moved through him. He would go home and bring with him a mountain that would fit in a hand. And when he slept, he dreamed of Winterfell, and in his dream the godswood was white and the pool was clear and the red face looked down, untroubled, upon a boy with two names who knew, for once, that he had not stolen either.